Onions are a much-loved and popular superfood around the world, but did you know that eating them incorrectly can turn into a real disaster for your health? In this video, we will reveal 10 fatal mistakes with onions that can cost you your life. Mistakes that are extremely rarely talked about but can cause cancer, stroke, or even cardiac arrest. From dangerous food combinations to improper preparation, you'll be surprised how dangerous what was thought to be harmless can be. Watch to the end to learn how to avoid these mistakes and keep yourself healthy. This video will be extremely informative and helpful. So, if you want to become a master of your health, click like, and let's get started. Fatal Mistake 1. Consuming onions with pesticides and chemicals. One of the biggest dangers is that onions contain residues of pesticides and other chemicals that are used in agriculture to protect plants from pests and diseases. Studies show that pesticides used to treat vegetables can accumulate in produce and enter the human body when consumed. According to the World Health Organization, WHO, more than 200,000 people die each year from illnesses related to exposure to pesticides and other toxic chemicals in food. Pesticides have been linked to an increased risk of various cancers, including stomach, liver, and colon cancer. One 2018 study from the Cancer Institute found that people who regularly consumed foods with high levels of pesticides were 30% more likely to develop cancer. This is because pesticides can damage cell DNA, cause mutations, and promote the formation of malignant tumors. Many farmers and consumers are unaware that using harsh chemicals to treat crops can have disastrous consequences. For example, in one case described in the journal Health Perspectives, a group of people who regularly consumed non-organic vegetables treated with pesticides showed a dramatic increase in blood toxicity levels. This led to an increase in cancer cases among this group over several years. So what can you do to keep yourself and your family safe? The answer is simple. Choose organic onions or wash them thoroughly before consumption. Organic produce is grown without the use of synthetic pesticides, which greatly reduces the risk of your body being exposed to harmful chemicals. If organic onions are not available, wash conventional onions thoroughly under running water or use a special solution to remove pesticides. You can also peel onions from the top layers of the skin, as this is where most chemicals accumulate. However, don't forget that onions are a valuable source of antioxidants and phytonutrients that help fight inflammation and protect the body from free radicals. Proper preparation of the product for consumption will allow you to preserve its benefits and avoid dangerous health consequences. Be mindful of your diet and choose your foods consciously. This will help you not only enjoy their flavor, but also protect yourself from fatal mistakes that could cost you your life. Fatal Mistake 2. Overconsumption of fried onions. This culinary habit, seemingly harmless and everyday, can turn into a serious threat to your health if you don't take precautions. Fried onions are a popular ingredient in many dishes. However, when onions are fried at high temperatures, chemical changes occur that can lead to the formation of substances that are hazardous to your health. One of the most well-known carcinogens formed during frying is acrylamide. This toxin is formed when carbohydrates and proteins are processed at high temperatures, and its effects on the body can be fatal. Acrylamide was first discovered by scientists in 2002, and since then it has been the subject of numerous studies. According to the European Food Safety Authority, EFSA, acrylamide can damage the DNA of cells, which increases the risk of cancerous tumors, especially in the esophagus, pancreas, and lungs. The World Health Organization has also listed acrylamide as a potential carcinogen, highlighting its danger with long-term exposure. According to a 2015 Harvard School of Public Health study, people who regularly consumed fried foods, including fried onions, were 30% more likely to be at risk for cardiovascular disease. More than 100,000 people participated in the study, and the results confirmed that acrylamide has a strong negative impact on the cardiovascular system, causing inflammation and damage to arteries. In one published story, a man who was an avid fan of fried onions added them to his meals daily. After a few years, he developed a chronic inflammatory process in his stomach, which eventually led to the development of esophageal cancer. Doctors attributed this to the accumulation of carcinogens in the body due to frequent consumption of heavily fried foods. So, what can be done to avoid this fatal mistake? First, you need to minimize frying onions at high temperatures. If you like fried onions, try cooking them on medium heat and use oil with a high smoke point, such as virgin olive oil or coconut oil. This will help avoid the formation of carcinogens. Second, pay attention to the cooking method. Instead of frying, try baking onions in the oven or steaming them. This will preserve the onion's health benefits, such as vitamin, antioxidant, and phytonutrient content, without subjecting it to dangerous heat treatments. Don't forget the importance of balance in your diet. Constant consumption of fried foods increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, strokes, and cancer. Therefore, diversify your menu with fresh vegetables, steamed or oven-cooked, to reduce your health risks and continue to enjoy the taste of onions without fatal consequences. Fatal mistake 3. Combining onions with other foods that cause digestive disorders. Onions, like many other foods, have a strong effect on digestion. However, when combined with certain foods, it can cause serious gastrointestinal disorders. For example, onions eaten at the same time as legumes, dairy products, or heavy fried foods can cause bloating, gas, heartburn, and even worsen symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. Studies show that onions contain fructooligosaccharides, which, as complex carbohydrates, are poorly digested and can cause excessive gas. In 2018, a study published in the journal Gastroenterology Research and Practice showed that combining onions with foods rich in fat or protein slows digestion, increasing the risk of bloating, dyspepsia, and heartburn. Researchers at the University of Oxford also studied the effects of onions on patients with irritable bowel syndrome. The research found that 60% of patients who consumed onions in combination with legumes or cabbage vegetables had significantly increased symptoms of bowel distress, including diarrhea and abdominal pain. In one published story, a woman who suffered from frequent digestive upset regularly consumed onions in combination with fried foods and dairy products. Over time, her condition worsened and doctors diagnosed her with ulcerative gastritis. After she eliminated such food combinations from her diet, her digestion improved and her gastritis symptoms disappeared. To avoid fatal consequences from the wrong combination of onions with other foods, it is important to follow simple rules. First, avoid eating onions together with foods that are difficult to digest, fatty, fried foods, dairy products, and legumes. Onions are best combined with vegetables, greens, and foods rich in fiber. This improves its absorption and minimizes the risk of digestive disorders. Second, if you are prone to stomach problems, try to consume onions in boiled or baked form. Heat treatment softens its effect on the gastrointestinal tract and reduces the risk of irritation. Also, add more probiotics to your diet, such as kefir or yogurt with live bacteria, to support gut health and improve digestion after eating onions. Don't forget that eating healthy is not only about choosing healthy foods, but also choosing the right combination of foods. This will help you avoid digestive problems and enjoy all the health benefits of onions without health risks. Fatal mistake 4. Consumption of onions in large quantities in chronic stomach diseases. Onions have long been known for their healing properties, and many people regularly include them in their diet to boost their immune system and improve their overall health. However, for those who suffer from chronic stomach conditions, such as gastritis, peptic ulcers, or gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, excessive onion consumption can be disastrous for health. Studies show that in people with GERD or gastritis, onions can provoke an increase in symptoms, including heartburn, pain, and even bleeding from ulcers. A 2015 study published in the journal Digestive Diseases and Sciences found that 72% of patients with GERD had their symptoms worsened after consuming raw vegetables such as onions and garlic. These foods help to increase acid production in the stomach, which worsened the patient's overall condition. Another study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that regular consumption of onions can irritate the stomach in people with hyperacidity, which in the long term increases the risk of peptic ulcers and gastritis. One patient's story described in scientific publications demonstrates the dangers of excessive onion consumption in the presence of peptic ulcers. A man suffering from chronic gastritis liked to add large portions of onions to every meal. After several months, his condition worsened significantly. Severe stomach pains began, which led to hospitalization with a diagnosis of gastric ulcer. Doctors strongly recommended him to exclude onions from his diet and switch to a gentle diet. For people with chronic stomach disease, onion consumption should be limited and strictly monitored. Raw vegetables, especially onions, can greatly increase the irritation of the gastric mucosa, leading to poor health. First, if you have chronic gastrointestinal diseases, try to consume onions in moderation and only after heat treatment. Boiling, stewing, or baking onions greatly reduces their irritating effect on the stomach. Secondly, avoid eating onions on an empty stomach, especially raw. It is best to add onions to dishes that neutralize their offensive effects, such as soups or stewed vegetables. This will help minimize the risk of irritation and the development of serious complications. Finally, if you experience symptoms of heartburn or stomach pain after consuming onions, be sure to see your doctor and reconsider your diet. It is important to realize that even the most beneficial products can be dangerous if you do not take into account the individual characteristics of the body and existing diseases. Fatal mistake 5. Consumption of onions with circulatory problems. When we think of onions, we most often imagine them as an integral part of dishes that adds flavor and benefits to our body. But as beneficial as onions are, consuming them improperly can have disastrous consequences for people with circulatory problems. Onions have strong anticoagulant properties that can become a real life-threatening condition. Onion is known for its effect on the blood. It contains sulfur compounds and quercetin, which help reduce the risk of blood clots by making the blood less viscous. This sounds like a wonderful property, especially for preventing cardiovascular disease. However, for people who take anticoagulants or other blood-thinning medications, this can turn out to be a serious problem. Combining onions with medications such as warfarin, aspirin, or heparin can significantly increase their effects, which can eventually lead to internal bleeding and, in more severe cases, hemorrhagic strokes. According to a study published in the Journal of Clinical Nutrition in 2018, regular consumption of onions in large quantities can significantly enhance the effects of blood-thinning drugs. The study involved 200 patients with cardiovascular disease who were diagnosed with an increased risk of thrombosis. It was observed that those who ate onions in combination with anticoagulants had a higher risk of bleeding-related complications than those who excluded onions from their diet. For example, in 2017, there was a case reported in Germany where a man who suffered from thrombosis and was taking warfarin began actively adding fresh onions to his diet. A few weeks later, he was hospitalized with internal bleeding, which led to a severe condition that required emergency intervention. If you suffer from circulatory problems or are taking blood thinners, you should be especially careful with onions. This does not mean that you should completely abandon this useful product, but it is better to consult with your doctor to determine a safe dosage. In addition, it is important to keep in mind that some natural remedies, such as garlic and turmeric, also have anticoagulant properties. Combining them with onions and medications can increase the risk of bleeding. Your doctor can help you balance your diet to stay healthy and avoid negative effects. It is also advisable to avoid excessive consumption of raw vegetables with strong anticoagulant properties if you are taking blood-thinning medications. Measure and a sensible approach are key aspects of safely consuming foods like onions. Onions are indeed a powerful natural medicine, but consuming them incorrectly can turn out to be truly life-threatening. If you have circulatory problems or are taking anticoagulants, it is important to consult your doctor before adding onions to your daily diet. Fatal mistake 6. Excessive consumption of onions in liver diseases. Onions, with their many health benefits, can be a real health lifesaver, but as with any food, their consumption requires a sensible approach, especially in people with liver disease. Despite its rich content of antioxidants and sulfur compounds, the abuse of onions can put a serious strain on the liver and lead to deterioration of its function, especially if the organ is already weakened by chronic diseases. The sulfur compounds found in onions play an important role in antioxidant activity and detoxification of the body. However, in people with liver disease such as cirrhosis, fatty hepatosis, or hepatitis, excessive amounts of these compounds can overload the liver, which can exacerbate already existing problems. When the liver is weakened, its ability to process toxins and fats is greatly reduced. In this case, excessive consumption of onions, which are rich in sulfur-containing compounds, can trigger inflammation and worsen liver function. This can lead to an increase in symptoms of diseases such as liver failure and may require more serious medical intervention. Studies show that in people with chronic liver disease, it is important to limit the consumption of foods rich in sulfur compounds. For example, a study published in the journal Hepatology in 2019 noted that patients with cirrhosis who consumed more than 100 grams of raw onions per day showed a worsening of liver function tests such as alanine aminotransferase, ALT, and aspartate aminotransferase, AST levels. This resulted in increased symptoms of fatigue and weakness, which required adjustments to their diet. In addition, there have been documented cases where patients with fatty hepatosis experienced a dramatic deterioration in their condition after regularly consuming large amounts of onions. This is due to the fact that the liver does not have time to process the excess sulfur-containing compounds, which causes inflammation and increased levels of fat in the organ's tissues. Let's take the case of a patient named Victor, who suffered from fatty hepatosis for several years. Believing in the benefits of onions as a detoxifying agent, he began to actively incorporate them into his diet, consuming up to 150 grams of raw onions daily. After a few weeks, he began to experience severe fatigue, right subcostal pain, and noticed yellowing of his skin. After consulting a doctor and undergoing tests, it turned out that his condition had worsened due to an overload of sulfur compounds in the onions on his liver. After adjusting his diet and reducing the amount of onions he consumed, his condition began to improve. For people with liver disease, it is extremely important to control the consumption of onions and other foods rich in sulfur-containing compounds. Doctors recommend consuming onions in moderation and limiting their amount to safe limits, no more than 50 grams per day, depending on the patient's health condition. It is important to monitor your body's reaction and consult your doctor when adding this vegetable to your diet. If you have been diagnosed with liver problems, it is also important to avoid excessive consumption of other foods containing sulfur, such as garlic and broccoli, so as not to overload the liver. Fatal mistake 7. Consumption of onions for kidney disease. Onion is a vegetable with a rich history in folk medicine, and for many centuries it has been considered a universal remedy to promote health. But like any other product, onions may not be as harmless as they seem at first glance. This is especially true for people suffering from kidney disease. Imagine a person who has considered onions an integral part of his diet all his life. He adds it to soups, roasts, salads, believing that he is doing only the best for his health. But as he ages, his body begins to change, and one day he is diagnosed with chronic renal failure. What the man doesn't realize is that onions, that familiar companion to his meals, are now a potential threat. Onions, rich in potassium, become dangerous to a person with weakened kidneys. When the kidneys function normally, they efficiently filter the blood and remove excess potassium with urine. But if the kidneys fail to do this, the potassium levels in the blood begin to rise like a tidal wave that can lead to disaster. Hyperkalemia is an insidious condition where excess potassium in the blood can cause muscle weakness, irregular heartbeat, and in the most severe cases, a heart attack. Take Mary, for example, a woman aged 65 who, despite her kidney problems, continued to add onions to her favorite dishes every day. She had no idea that this simple vegetable could prove dangerous to her health. One day, she began to notice strange symptoms. Her muscles began to weaken and her heart began to beat irregularly. When she went to the doctor, she learned that her blood potassium levels were at a critical level and her onion eating habit could have cost her her life. Studies show that up to 40% of people with chronic kidney failure suffer from hyperkalemia. Doctors strongly advise such patients to closely monitor their diet and avoid foods high in potassium. However, even small changes in diet may not be enough without control and regular monitoring of electrolyte levels in the blood. In addition to potassium, onions contain oxalates, substances that can increase the risk of kidney stones. And while the concentration of oxalates in onions is not as high as in spinach, for example, even small amounts can make a difference for someone with kidney dysfunction. Such stones can cause pain and infection, creating a vicious cycle of problems where an attempt to maintain health through nutrition turns into new complications. So what should you do if onions have been part of your diet for years, but now you've learned of their potential kidney threats? First of all, there's no need to panic. There is always a solution. It's important to consult with a nephrologist who can help tailor your diet to your kidney health. It may be necessary to eliminate onions or reduce the amount of onions in your diet. There are also alternatives. Vegetables with lower potassium content, such as zucchini or carrots, can be great substitutes in familiar recipes. Your challenge is to find a balance where you can enjoy a delicious and healthy meal without risking your health. Maria, whom we talked about earlier, managed to avoid tragedy by changing her eating habits in time. Under the doctor's supervision, she managed to stabilize her blood potassium levels and learned to cook new dishes that tasted as good as the ones she was used to. Her story reminds us that even the most innocuous products can be dangerous, especially if you do not take into account the peculiarities of your own body. Thus, the use of onions in kidney disease requires special attention and control. This favorite vegetable can become a serious enemy if you neglect the recommendations of specialists. However, proper nutrition and regular medical examinations will help to preserve health and avoid unpleasant consequences. Fatal mistake. 8. Combining onions with diabetes medications. Onions are not only a versatile and flavorful ingredient, but also a product with powerful medical properties. It has the ability to lower blood sugar levels due to the compounds it contains, such as allicin. This effect can be very beneficial for people with high glucose levels. However, if onions are consumed in combination with anti-diabetic medications, the effects can be extremely dangerous. Taking onions along with sugar-lowering medications can lead to hypoglycemia, a condition in which blood glucose levels drop to critical levels. Hypoglycemia can manifest itself through symptoms such as sudden weakness, dizziness, sweating, rapid heartbeat, and even loss of consciousness. In some cases, hypoglycemia can lead to coma or other serious health conditions that require emergency medical attention. Research shows that these reactions are most likely to occur in people who take sugar control medications such as metformin or insulin in combination with large doses of onions. A 2019 study in the journal Diabetes Research and Clinical Practice highlights the risk of interactions between foods containing natural sugar-lowering ingredients and anti-diabetic medications. The study notes that simultaneous consumption of such products can enhance the effects of the medications and lead to a dramatic drop in glucose levels. To minimize the risks associated with consuming onions and anti-diabetic medications, it is important to exercise caution and follow the advice of medical professionals. If you are taking medications to control your blood sugar levels, be sure to consult your doctor before making significant changes to your diet, especially if you plan to increase your onion consumption. Your doctor may suggest adjusting the dosage of your medication or regularly monitoring your blood glucose levels to avoid dangerous fluctuations. This approach will not only help you avoid hypoglycemia, but also help you maintain an overall balance in managing your diabetes, keeping you healthy and well. Fatal mistake. 9. Allergic reactions to onions. Although onion allergies are less common than other foods, they can still pose serious health risks. Onion allergies can present with a variety of symptoms ranging from mild skin irritations to severe anaphylactic reactions that can be fatal without immediate medical attention. Allergic reactions to onions can be caused by either raw or cooked products, but they are most common when raw onions are consumed because heat treatment partially destroys the allergens. Studies show that onions contain several proteins that can trigger allergies. A 2012 study published in the journal Allergy found that 1% of participants experienced various allergic reactions to onions, such as skin rashes, swelling, itching, and even anaphylaxis. One of the most dangerous aspects of these allergies is that even the smallest amount of onions in a dish can trigger a reaction in sensitive individuals. Anaphylactic shock is the most serious manifestation of onion allergy that requires immediate medical intervention. This condition can lead to respiratory arrest and heart failure if adrenaline is not administered in time. In one reported case in Spain, a middle-aged woman allergic to onions accidentally ate a dish with a small amount of onions. Within minutes, she developed severe swelling, choking, and a drop in blood pressure. Doctors diagnosed her with anaphylactic shock, and only a surgical injection of adrenaline saved her life. For those who suspect an allergic reaction to onions, it is important to see a doctor and undergo allergy tests to accurately determine the presence and extent of the allergy. If an onion allergy is confirmed, eliminate it completely from your diet and read food labels carefully to avoid hidden ingredients. It's also important to have epinephrine on hand, especially if you've already had anaphylactic reactions to onions or other foods. If you experience the first symptoms of allergies, such as itching, rashes, or difficulty breathing, you should seek medical attention immediately. And while onions remain an important and healthy food for most people, those who are allergic to them should be especially cautious. Neglecting allergy symptoms can lead to catastrophic, life-threatening consequences. Fatal mistake. 10. Storing sliced onions for too long. Onions are a powerful ally for health, but storing them improperly can turn into a serious hazard. One of the most common mistakes people make is storing sliced onions for too long. While onions are rich in antioxidants and beneficial compounds, they can also be a great breeding ground for bacteria, which can lead to food poisoning and even more serious illnesses, especially in immunocompromised people. Once onions are sliced, their structure is compromised, and they become more vulnerable to germs and bacteria from the environment. The moist and warm environment is especially conducive to the rapid multiplication of bacteria such as Escherichia coli, Salmonella, and Staphylococcus aureus, which can cause severe poisoning. One myth that is actively circulating is that sliced onions absorb bacteria from the air and become toxic. In fact, bacteria multiply on onions not because they suck them up from the environment, but because sliced onions provide ideal conditions for their growth. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, food poisoning affects millions of people worldwide each year. In 2021, about 48 million cases of food poisoning in the U.S. were linked to a variety of pathogens, including bacteria that can multiply on improperly stored foods, such as sliced onions. Among them, Salmonella strains are particularly dangerous and can lead to serious infections in immunocompromised people, children, and the elderly. A study published in the journal Food Microbiology in 2020 found that sliced onions stored at room temperature for more than 6 hours had a significantly increased risk of bacterial contamination. Storing sliced onions in the refrigerator reduces the risk of contamination, but even under these conditions, they should be consumed within 24 hours. Take the case of Anna, who once left sliced onions on her kitchen countertop overnight, forgetting to put them away in the refrigerator. The next day, she used those onions to make a salad. A few hours after eating it, she experienced severe abdominal pain, nausea, and diarrhea. After going to the hospital and undergoing tests, it turned out that she had contracted Salmonella bacteria that had multiplied on the leftover onions. Doctors were able to stabilize her condition, but this case was a reminder of the importance of proper food storage. To avoid similar incidents, it's important to follow simple rules for storing sliced onions. First, if you are not going to use the sliced onions right away, be sure to store them in an airtight container in the refrigerator. The storage temperature should be no higher than 4 degrees Celsius, 39.2 degrees Fahrenheit. It is advisable to consume sliced onions within 24 hours to minimize the risk of bacterial contamination. Also, avoid storing sliced onions at room temperature, especially in warm weather when bacteria multiply faster. If an onion has been sliced and stored for longer than 6 hours outside of the refrigerator, it's best not to risk it and throw it away. So, how do you properly use onions for maximum benefits and safely? Onions are a true treasure of nature that many of us use on a daily basis, without giving much thought to their underlying benefits. However, proper use of this vegetable requires attention to detail that will help you get the most out of it and avoid potential trouble. Let us guide you through a process that will help make onions your staunch ally in maintaining your health. Step 1. Choosing the right onion. Let's start with the fact that there are several varieties of onions, and each one has unique properties. Yellow onions are a classic. Their flavor is sharp, but they become sweet and mild after heat treatment. White onions are less pungent, ideal for fresh salads. Their flavor is more delicate. Red onions are characterized by their richness and are suitable for marinades. They are rich in anthocyanins, powerful antioxidants that strengthen the immune system. It is important to understand which type of onion is best for your purpose. For example, if you want to add onions to raw salads for health benefits, choose red onions. And if you plan to braise or bake it for mild flavor and to preserve its antioxidant properties, yellow onions would be a great choice. Step 2. Cooking to preserve the benefits. When it comes to cooking onions, it's important not to overheat them. Surprisingly, when cooked over low heat at about 120 degrees Celsius, 248 degrees Fahrenheit, for 10 to 20 minutes, onions retain most of their beneficial compounds. This cooking method allows the onions to reveal their sweetness and retain their valuable fiber, which promotes intestinal health. To preserve vitamins and antioxidants, try to avoid overcooking at high temperatures. Not only can this destroy the beneficial substances, but it can also lead to the formation of harmful compounds. One way to avoid this is to braise onions with a little olive oil. This will not only soften its flavor, but also enhance the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. Step 3. Using onions in cold dishes. If you prefer to add onions to cold dishes such as salads or appetizers, the best way to maximize the benefits is to slice them just before serving. Onions lose their nutritional properties quickly once they are sliced, so it's best to prepare them shortly before eating. If you do decide to slice them ahead of time, store the onions in an airtight container in the refrigerator, but not for more than a day. To reduce the harshness and sharpness of the flavor, you can soak the onions in ice water for 10 to 15 minutes before adding them to the salad. Not only will this soften its flavor, but it will also retain its crunchy texture. Step 4. Dosage and frequency of use. Equally important is how often and in what quantities you consume onions. You can use onions as part of your daily diet, but it's important to use them in moderation. For example, a daily serving of onions of about 50 to 60 grams is an ideal balance that provides enough antioxidants, vitamins, and fiber without risking the gastrointestinal tract. Moderation is especially important for people with sensitive stomachs or a tendency to heartburn. If you find that onions make you uncomfortable, try reducing the amount or substituting a raw version for a cooked one. This often helps. Step 5. Combinations with other foods. Onions become even more beneficial when combined with other foods. For example, if you add it to dishes rich in vitamin C, such as peppers or cabbage, it enhances its antioxidant effects. Onions also pair well with foods that contain healthy fats, such as olive oil or avocado, which helps in better absorption of its benefits. One of the most interesting ways to use onions is to combine them with garlic. Together, these two foods form a powerful natural complex that supports the immune system and helps strengthen the heart. Step 6. Proper storage. In order for onions to retain their beneficial properties for a long time, it is important to store them properly. Never keep onions in plastic bags. This will lead to rapid rotting. The ideal place for storage is a cool and dark place with a temperature of about 10 to 12 degrees Celsius, 50 to 53 degrees Fahrenheit. This can be pantries or lower shelves of closets, where onions can rest and retain all their useful properties for several months. Also remember, sliced onions, as I mentioned above, should be consumed as soon as possible. In an airtight container in the refrigerator, it can be stored for no more than 1 day, after which it begins to lose vitamins and antioxidants. Conclusion. Onions, like any other natural food, require respect and an informed approach. It can be a true ally in the promotion of health if you approach its use wisely. What do you think about this? Do you agree with these statements? If there are any questions, ask them in the comments. More information on this topic can be found at the links in the description below this video and on our channel.
Subscribe and hit the bell for all notifications. Please like and share this video with your friends. Thanks to our sponsors for their support. I eagerly await your comments and encourage you to watch these useful videos.